So my presentation is on the Miranda versus Arizona Supreme Court case, which occurred in 1966, and this primarily just establishes the rights one has once they're arrested. And so originally, the government used something called the Fundamentals of Fairness Standard. And this standard was something the police officials had to comply to, otherwise their evidence wouldn't be admissible for the court cases, and this was state and federally enforced. And the Miranda versus Arizona case was almost a symbolism for the court's collective judgment, because there were many cases that had similar issues. And below are some of the cases that were very similar. For instance, the map in Ohio, and I found this political cartoon, which I thought was a very good representation of the fairness doctrine, because he has to listen to both the angel and the devil, although he knows the devil is wrong. He still has to listen. The background on this case would be Ernesto Miranda, who was convicted of raping, kidnapping, and robbing, and he was brought into police custody and interrogated. And in the beginning of this interrogation, he didn't want to sign a consent form that it said he was guilty, but after 2 hours or more of the interrogation, he signed a form that consented that he was indeed guilty, and they also had a verbal acknowledgement that he was guilty. And on your left is the consent form that said, I admit to these charges, and on the right is Ernesto Miranda once he was taken into police custody. The issues with this would be that there was government abuse in a way, because they didn't let him know that he had the right to an attorney, nor the right not to incriminate himself once he was taken into custody and before he was interrogated. And he was unaware when he had signed this document that it stated he did acknowledge and understood that he had his Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights made clear to him, but that wasn't true. And the constitutional rights, as I said earlier, were the Fifth and Sixth. So the Fifth would be the right not to incriminate yourself, or more commonly known as the right to remain silent, and the Sixth Amendment was the right to an attorney, before, after, and during interrogation. So the result was that he was convicted guilty, and the original conviction was 20 to 30 years. However, since Miranda won the trial 5-4, they could not use the evidence they previously found, so they had to use different evidence, and he was only put in prison for 11 years. And Miranda is number 1, so on your far left. And so questions that you might have about the Constitution is, who holds the proof in determining whether the defendant has legally waived his or her rights? What is the standard for judging whether voluntary confession should be deemed admissible, and when should the attorney be appointed for the person? And all three of these issues are what he struggled with in his court case. Then during the case, people argued on Miranda's side that he wasn't given his Fifth or Sixth Amendments, so they didn't give him a new trial, as well as they admitted the evidence that was given to him. However, when he won, this isn't true. And then Arizona said that he was no stranger to the police procedures, so he was often interrogated, and he'd been through the process before. He signed the confession willingly, and his imprisonment was just because he did admit to these crimes. However, the final judgment was when Earl Warren, Chief Justice, signed a statement that said that you did have to read your rights before a person came into the interrogation, and this was often known as the Miranda rights. The significance of this court case was that it eliminated involuntary confession, so the right to not incriminate yourself. It gave the people who were being arrested a full understanding of what their rights were before it occurred, and this also altered the enforcement procedures, so it kind of let you know that you can change the government in ways to make it more socially acceptable as it progresses. And the top picture would be Ernesto Miranda and his attorney, John, and on the bottom would be the Miranda rights, which were altered from state to state, but they have the basic fundamental laws. excited.
All right, thanks, Emily.